Season 8, Episode 14, A Matter of Principles. Starlight is given substitute principal status. Discord shows up. Everything sucks. The end. You know what really pisses me off about this episode? You're not going to guess it. So I'll just tell you. With 2 changes, this episode could have worked really well. Now, I should probably mention that one of those changes is actually a fairly substantial change. It would, in fact, involve a total restructuring of the episode and effectively writing a new episode on top of that. So it's not a small change. But still, 2 changes would fix this. This is written by Nicole, I don't know how to pronounce her name, who did Shadow Play Part 1 and 2, School Days Part 1 and 2, Marks for Effort, and this one, which is a red, a purple, a red, an orange, and orange. And we'll see. Let me go through the episode first. Then I'll talk about the 2 changes, okay? So let's rewind a second. So, apparently the writer in question originally had 2 separate ideas for this episode. The first idea was that Starlight was too proud to ask for help when she needed it, and that was going to be the structure of the episode. And Discord was like, I'll offer to help, and she's like, no, I refuse. And she would just not succeed at being a headmistress all on her own, and then eventually she would have to ask Discord for help, and then it would succeed. Quick note, that sounds like a better episode. The second idea was that Discord was specifically antagonizing her because he felt that another reformed villain, who has less screen time than him, would be a worse choice than he would to take this slot. That sounds like a worse episode than this one. So we move in. Of course, Acellus knows what the artifacts are. Also, the Helm of Yggslurb. Yggslurb, excuse me, I'm saying that wrong. It is interesting that these are gifts from Celestia for 2 reasons. On the one hand, this is Celestia throwing even more political capital into this school, and by consequence, Twilight. Notice that is a continuing trend and has been for some time now. Bit by bit, Celestia continues to politically endorse Twilight. Have you been noticing that? Because I've been noticing that for seasons at this point. I feel like they're going somewhere with that. Don't spoil. Don't even mention. Don't even reference. I don't want to hear it. But it is my analysis that that's a build-up. That's a multi-season build-up. And I really hope that pays off somewhere. Second of all, it's interesting to note that Celestia had an artifact from each culture to begin with. Where and how she got those, I feel like that's an interesting story. Because she can obviously just ask. You know, they do have friendly relations with all these races at this point. But she might not have asked in all of these cases. That would have been an interesting story, finding out the backstory and history of each of these artifacts as they go through and get them, and then Discord has some shenanigans which aren't assholery. That would have been a good episode, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So, all of the main 6 are called to a mission on the very edge of the map. My first thought was, oh, that's so cool. It means that we're starting to see this expand, and it's really out there. And as they start heading off, I'm like, oh god, we're never going to find out what the mission was, are we? But then I thought, wait, we might. Because what might happen is they might do that thing where the next episode covers the other side of it. They've done this before, where 2 episodes are happening side by side. And so I see this sign of this, see this scene. And yeah, I was really excited. I know that sounds so stupid, but there were so many possibilities about another main 6, all 6 of them going on a mission to the edge of the known map, which is, as we all know at this point, effectively the edge of how far the concept of harmony, the pattern, has expanded. That sounds it. Nope, red herring. So, Twilight does have a plan for substitutes, which is good. You know, they should be. For God's sakes, these ponies all regularly deal with their own real lives and their other jobs, and occasionally the map stuff, so it makes sense that they would have a plan in mind for substitutes. So, yeah, okay, sure, I'm with that. We do know, of course, how well it worked out the last time Twilight gave a huge list of stuff to do to Starlight, but I'm willing to walk over that. And yeah, but didn't plan for substitute teachers for some frickety reason. Okay. Whatever. However, I need to do something just to keep track here, okay? we're going to keep track of the continuity counters in this episode because there's so many. I just started making notes as each one showed up because there's a ton of them. So the first thing that happens is we have a Rarity crush, actually. Sorry. Goodbye, Rarity. And also the others. I know this is going to sound so stupid, but I keep kind of wishing that they would forget that Rarity crushes exist. Or do something with it. One of the two. I don't care which. Just pick one. It's okay. He's growing up. It's okay now. So, first continuity counter. Spike has a casual reference to being a princess for Twilight was hard enough. Side note. That actually got a laugh out of me. When Starlight is like, I'm just going to pretend that made sense. Because obviously she would know that story because Spike probably wouldn't want to repeat that story. I wouldn't want to repeat that story either. Princess Spike. So, Discord shows up, who recalls a whole song about making your own rules. And who's better at that than I am? Okay. Interesting tidbit, of course. Starlight, through this whole section, is not rubbing this in Discord's face. That's an important thing to keep in mind. Because Discord is obviously overtly bothered by the fact that Starlight was put in charge instead of him, and Discord hasn't been invited to the school. Let's be clear, one of those is a valid reason to be bothered. And I mean that. You'd think they would have brought in Discord as a formal invitation at some point, because this is a school about friendship, and first of all, he's a really good case study of someone who slowly, gradually, over 2 seasons, learned the concept of friendship, but also the fact that this is supposed to be a multicultural event, and while he is effectively a culture of one, it still counts. And he can do fun, silly stuff because he's freaking Discord. Right? If anything, this is one of those wonderful situations that I encounter all the time when it comes to analyzing fiction, because Lore Reloaded and I actually have some, not quite arguments, but discussions about this, because we're debating something in Trek, right? And he says, well, if you look at the episode and you look at the show and you look at what they do, this person's clearly evil. And I say, yeah, but they clearly didn't intend that. This is just bad writing. We're both right. In both circumstances, we are correct. What happened was the writers didn't consider something, or didn't think about something, or didn't put the effort into something, or didn't flesh something out properly. And this happens all the time in Trek. It happens all the time in fiction. And so if you analyze it, you come up with a conclusion that clearly isn't what was intended on display. And that's where he and I differ, because he tends to prefer the in-character perspective, whereas I take into account the out-of-character perspective of, no, this is just bad writing. So as for why Twilight has never actually invited Discord over, or why Fluttershy never has, this is just bad writing. Moving on. Right? Think about it. You cannot tell me that this school, which has been up for a bare minimum of 9 months, by the way, canonically, has at no point did it occur to anyone to invite Discord to this. Anyways, so, whatever. So Discord's upset about it, but Starlight isn't rubbing it in because she's heard about this, and she doesn't want this job, and she's worried about doing it properly. Okay, that's in character for her, and so far in character for him. Up until this... And this is when the episode loses me. I know it's becoming a meme, but here we are. Because up until this point in the episode, I'm at least kind of with it. There's one little ding, but otherwise, okay. Then Discord starts rewriting the rules, making gravity optional, and Starlight can still fly by levitation. And then there's this bit where Spike mentions ogres and oubliettes. And there's also this bit where he mentions, I do like this, Spike actually has a brain throughout this entire episode. Spike says, anytime he puts that many E's in really, it doesn't end well. Yeah. As a further aside, there's this bit where Starlight says, you know, we're friends, but he's not acting like friends. Why do that? Let's be clear. The issue with this episode is Discord goes too far. That is the problem with this episode. Everything else could be smoothed over or easily kind of... It would be a problem, but not a big problem. But the issue is Discord is so far out of line, it completely throws the entire rest of the episode out of whack. He goes way over the line, even for Discord. He is effectively being villainous Discord here. the resolution wouldn't be as bad if he wasn't this bad. That's my point. It would still be bad, don't mistake me. But it wouldn't be as bad. It wouldn't be as egregious if he was down here instead of up here. And that's my exact point. This is the problem with the episode. Now, I would absolutely do a substantial rewrite of this, but the fact that he goes this far out of character, and I'm going to say it that way, this is character assassination. I cannot actually believe that Discord would be this much of an asshole at this point in his character arc. This is stupid. This is what magnifies every other problem of the episode, because there are other problems of the episode, like the resolution. But instead it's just, I'm being a total asshole for no good reason, and going too far with it. Okay, so then we have the Twitter mites. Discord is just turning this into a continuity episode. Iron Will shows up, who talks about how in order they call it making friends because you need to make people be your friends. This is why this episode isn't getting a lamentation in a nutshell, by the way. Pretty much everything that doesn't directly have to do with Discord is actually pretty good, and it kind of irritates me. Just like the last episode, I'd love to smash this as a terrible episode, but I can't. Because it's not 100% a terrible episode, which it doesn't hit lamentation status as a consequence. We might be talking about Blue, but, you know. So then we have this cute and adorable bit of continuity. We see the sociopath pony, I forgot her name, the one with the terrible hair. Why is Cranky being such an abusive dick here? I know his name is Cranky, but frankly, this is out of character for him, too. Oh, also Cranky. Cozy Glow, that was her name. So that... Okay, yep, nope. That's not good. I mean, he literally spits his drink in the guy serving him drinks' face 3 times in a row. That's not funny. And that's not in character. So you failed twice, episode. Side note, the episode could have had an interesting and fascinating topic here. You know what that is? Substitute teachers. I actually know someone personally who works as a substitute teacher. And let me tell you, that's a whole topic. From both perspectives, too. From the perspective of the student and from the perspective of the substitute. Because the substitute teacher has the same job the teacher has, but worse in every way. And from the students' perspectives, most substitutes tend to be worse than their teacher in every way, especially since most substitute teachers, in my experience, as well as the experience of friends of mine, tend to be either one of two things. Either way too strict, because they're not putting up with anything, which involves no learning, or way too lenient, because they don't care anymore. You know, how many times have you in school ever had a substitute teacher show up and put on a movie and go and sit and read a magazine for the duration of the class? Multiple times, by the way. And what's funny is you'd think that would be a good thing, and all I'm thinking is, well, we're supposed to be learning about such and such right now. Yes, I'm a geek. What do you want from me? The point is that at that point, there's no reason to even be at school. That's the, can I just go home point? If I wanted to watch a movie, I could do it at home. I'm not learning anything, and I'm not engaging in anything. There's no reason for me to be here if you're just going to turn on a movie and zone out for the rest of the day. Anyways. But we could have had a whole discussion about this, and there's a lot of nuance. There's a lot of back and forth. It's hard on both people. You know, there's no good answer. It's a great, wonderful, nuanced topic that this episode doesn't touch on at all. Instead, we just kind of keep having various substitutes show up. Okay, sure. I'm going to go and admit the Dragon Sneeze Tree got a legitimate laugh out of me. Oh, speaking of which, Dragon Sneeze Tree. Because it cuts to this thing, and they're all just sitting there, and there's just a tree. And what's-her-face goes up, puts an apple on the desk. Because, of course, she would be the one to put the apple on the desk, right? That got a laugh out of me. So then Starlight starts to get upset. Understandably so. And Spike says, Discord's trying to test you. Why? I thought we were friends. Yeah, that's just what he does. And he's actually kind of right. That is sort of Discord's thing, for good and for bad. Once again, I feel like I wouldn't dislike this episode as much if he wasn't this much of an asshole. That is the problem, is the severity of it. I've talked about this before. Concepts, when taken to exaggerated extremes, become bad, even if they could be a good thing. In fact, we've had this very concept in the only lamentation we've had so far, which was Flutterbrudder. Whatever the hell that stupid episode was called. It was his attitude being so exaggerated that brought that into lamentation status, because it's a magnifying effect on everything else in the episode, right? If he had been toned down substantially, that would have boosted that episode substantially as well. Instead, we have this problem, where Discord is so much out of character that it's actually hurting it. Make sense? So then he shows up and says, "Hello, fellow creatures," because that's a meme now. I probably shouldn't have found that funny, but I did laugh about that. Side note, Discord pulls out a fruit phone. Get it? And I will admit, I've never experienced that personally. However, I do know, thanks to someone I know who, works as a substitute teacher, that schools and phones are actually a very real problem right now. I finished college before smartphones really took off, so I never actually experienced that. But apparently that is a really big issue. Hey, Imperial Star Destroyer, this is my phone. It's an Apple. So, there's also the banana phone meme, which is probably the direct reference there, but they specifically call it fruit phones, so I was assuming it was an Apple reference. Anyways, yeah, it's not a great joke. The hello fellow creatures thing, that got a laugh out of me. Anyways, apparently it's such a bad issue that most kids are actually not allowed to bring their phones to school at all, that it's a keep it at home thing, and that's actually a very punishable offense nowadays, because, yeah, this is apparently a very real issue, and I can see why. It's gotten really bad in some schools. I know a certain school, which I shall not name any details about, where they actually have to start banning things like Pokemon cards because of how distracting it's gotten during school hours. Anyways, I'm not going to talk more about that because that's a lengthy and complex topic that would involve a total overhaul of our education system. The point is, he's like, okay, I'm going to mess with Trixie. It's nice to see Trixie, of course. She pulls out the Ursus Major, which is perfectly in character for her to pull out. I also admit the episode got... this is like 3 laughs now out of me. When she picks up the fruit phone and says, "What exactly is a long-distance plan?" I found that funny for 2 reasons. First reason is because, obviously, the obvious joke. But the second reason is, those don't actually exist anymore, to my knowledge. For those of you who don't remember, back in the day... Yeah, didn't I just say that in Imperial Star Destroyer? Discord does his magic, and then Trixie pulls out the Ursus Major. I swear I said that sentence. Maybe I didn't. I don't know. That was what I meant to say. So... Now I've lost my train of thought. Where was I? Now, back in the day, for those of you not aware, when you would do phone calls, and when you would have a phone plan, especially at home, one of the things you had to do is you had to pay extra to call long distance, which was anything outside of your area code, right? And then sometimes you had to pay to call to another state entirely. And in both cases, that was a very, very common thing. Having a friend with a long distance plan. I know personally that there are several examples where if I needed to call someone in another state, I would drive to that friend's house and say, "Hey, can I use your phone to call this person?" Because that's how that worked. Obviously, that isn't really a thing anymore, to my knowledge. I don't know if this is true in other countries. Sorry, I should clarify. This is from the perspective of the States. I have no idea what other countries do with long-distance phone calls. I just thought that was kind of amusing. Anyways, so then the bugbear shows up. I didn't like this episode up to this moment, but this is actually the official moment the episode lost me. This was the final piece of straw for me, is that he has this bugbear which is actually attacking the students. A fresh reminder that it took all the main 6 almost an entire day to defeat the bugbear the last time it showed up, and it was treated as a very serious threat. Obviously, Yona literally can't keep up, and nothing is in the way to try and save her. In fact, the only thing that saves her is Starlight. Now, this then leads to Starlight saying, "Endangering students crosses the line," which is true. Now, how many of you remember that Starlight's magic is powered by her emotions? So she's getting pretty angry, and there's a fairly loud, high-pitched hum as the magic on her horn is going. She's trying to visibly calm herself as she's talking to Discord. Then Discord says, "Why is it my problem that Twilight put an incompetent power-hungry unicorn in charge. Blam! It's a shame this is Discord and he's being out of character, because all of this makes perfect sense. This is extremely tight continuity and makes perfect sense in the universe, except for the fact that it makes absolutely no sense in universe. It's really frustrating. Yes, Spike immediately notices, because he knows how this works. He knows both people fairly well. He immediately tries to be like, hey, well, let's calm down. Starlight visibly tries to calm herself, doesn't try to bottle it up. And then when Discord punches that nerve, she explodes in what I think is actually the second biggest explosion we've seen in this entire franchise. The only bigger one being when Twilight was empowered by all of the magic of the alicorns when she was fighting Tyrek. Yeah. Yeah, if this wasn't Discord, I think this episode would be substantially better, because so many of my issues are boiling down to the fact that, to use a Star Trek equivalent, William Riker's running around and sexually forcing himself on everyone on the ship. And I know that sounds horrible and gross, and I did that on purpose, because that's just how out of character this is. I could have said Wesley, and it wouldn't actually change anything. Now, Talfire mentioned something. I actually thought about that, too. I had a random thought. What if Chrysalis was the one doing all of this? Or maybe Chrysalis, who is impersonating someone doing this. And the whole point is, of course, Chrysalis wants revenge on Starlight. So the map mission is real, Starlight's in charge, Chrysalis finds out about it. Chrysalis wants revenge against Starlight. Chrysalis shows up as one of the substitutes and starts poking all the buttons, right? Poking all the right buttons to really, really piss off Starlight. And finally pokes just a little bit too hard, blammo! And the only reason she even survives is because she's Chrysalis. Fair enough, Imperial Star. That's a good point. That's a good point. You're right. You're right. That you see how that one, this is one I mentioned earlier, one of these relatively minor changes would actually improve this. Now, again, you would have to restructure it, because you'd have to completely redo the finale, the final act of the episode, centered probably now around the students working together or something, and Starlight being able to properly coordinate the kids, take care of them while... No, hang on. So one of the hardest things to do is an escort quest, right? We all know this. But this is true in reality, not just in video game logic. Because if you are fighting someone who you're stronger than, then you beat them. But if your objective is not to defeat that person, but to keep these helpless civilians safe, you are now fighting a much harder battle, right? So Starlight is trying to keep everyone safe, and can't really devote herself to just defeating Chrysalis, because Chrysalis is effectively, let's call it what it is, being a terrorist, by constantly focusing on trying to attack the kids and the school. And there's our final act right there. And we could structure this however we want. It would be there's so many different directions you could take that. You could have the kids help, or you could have Spike end up working with Starlight to kind of re-coordinate this. You could bring Discord in to kind of help balance the things. You know, there's a lot of different directions you could take that. But I think that one relatively minor change, which again would require an episodic restructuring, would completely salvage this episode. Because at that point it becomes a character piece about Starlight, who is absolutely terrified about how incompetent she is, and again, worried about their past and trying to be a better person, and of course it ties into Chrysalis and makes her a continuing threat. It also makes Chrysalis a threat in a non-obvious manner. It also makes Chrysalis legitimately more deadly, because Chrysalis is willing to harm a child. Now, I know she is, right? I mean, Chrysalis is a pretty evil character. She's one of the most evil villains we've ever had on the show. But think about that for a second. That nails home just how desperate and how deranged she is, that she has no problem trying to harm a child just to get revenge on her. That's a character establishment point. It's like Zeiss. Him subbing is a character establishment point. It shows that he has absolutely no problems throwing money at me to try and convince me to play whatever game he's going to put that towards. I don't know what that game is, but by golly, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be terrifying, whatever it is. Thank you, Zeiss, as always. Very much appreciate. Thank you. And Satisfactory. Oh, that's terrifying. You see how evil Zeiss is for forcing me to play such an amazing game that I'm really looking forward to. Whatever. So instead of all that awesome we could have gotten, instead what we get is Discord being banished from the school. Okay. And a huge blast of death. Okay. Then they go and they start doing the mission, you know, the hiding thing. That's another thing you could have done, by the way. You keep building up these stupid artifacts. Maybe you could have done a thing where maybe the artifacts are key in finding or defeating or the Chrysalis or defending the kids from Chrysalis, you know? Harry Potter, hello? There's so much we could have done with that. Whatever. Instead, Discord's ghost gets in and starts haunting the school because, of course, Discord finds a way around that particular banishment spell. Why wouldn't he? I don't even know why you thought that would work, Starlight. I mean, I know why she thought it would work. It's because she was really, really pissed off. That's why she thought it would work. In other words, she didn't think about it at all. What do you mean, Tallfire? I mean, I think she banished his body from the school grounds, but I don't think it was going to stick for a minute. I was surprised he didn't come back immediately, to be completely blunt. This is Discord we're talking about here. Chaos magic, hello? So then we have some antics. Antics. In my notes, I have written a single word in all caps. It is the word, what? That is the only note I wrote down for the conclusion of the episode. Once again, if Discord had been a whole lot less severe and had been brought down to acceptable range, this might have worked. It wouldn't have been great, but it would have been a lot less bad. There's something just really messed up about the idea of someone apologizing to someone else who is being over-the-line asshole. There's no other way to put that. Now, I mentioned 2 ideas for how to fix this episode. Here's the other one. This wouldn't be a super engaging episode. It would make this a filler episode, and I freely admit that. But why not take... Yeah, exactly, Imperial Strike. It rewards the spoiled child for being bad, which is just... Take this scene, instead of making it the conclusion scene of the episode, shove it forwards. Okay, I'm going to put you in charge, Starlight. Discord shows up, and he's like, oh, I was hoping to help. And Starlight's like, well, I don't know. I mean, maybe we could do this. And then this scene happens. Like, Discord maybe has, like, one scene of him being upset about it and showing that he's upset about it. And Starlight says, know what? You're right. I apologize. You're my friend. We should totally work this together. And I know what you're thinking. Why do that at the beginning? Because then the rest of the episode could be all about everything else. It would make it a bit of a filler episode, but we could learn about the history of the settings, because of all the different cultures that are involved in the artifacts. We could have Discord kind of going through and being a part of each of these events, so we could have the Discord shenanigans and fun. We could still have the substitute teachers. It's always nice to see that kind of continuity, and it's nice to see, like, Trixie and all that. We could have a showcasing of how maybe if you want to have an actual dilemma for the episode, we could have Discord and Starlight having different approaches to things and trying to find a middle thing and blah, blah, blah. Right? There's several ways you could do this in order to make this work. They did none of them, of course. Instead, this is the conclusory part of the episode. Yeah, exactly, Imperial Star Destroyer. You get it. Discord could literally be bringing some of these moments to life. Like I said, I'm a little bit into the idea because I'm a big world builder. But we could have learned about the history and cultures of this setting through Discord literally making it happen, and with a few Discordiums on the side, right? Yeah, we could have mods show up. There's so much you could do with that concept. Instead, it's just Discord being an asshole for 15 minutes, and then being rewarded for it. And then Discord faked the summon. So this is something Tallfire just mentioned. How the hell did that even happen? Now, there's 2 possibilities here. One of which I'm okay with, one of which I absolutely despise. Possibility 1 is the idea that Discord is chaos magic, so he can do that. He is, after all, a part of harmony, as we've discussed before. He's chaos, not disharmony, and there is an important distinction, as we've discussed so many times. So, he has access to it, he manipulates it, cool, we're done. Relatively easy explanation. The second explanation is much, much, much worse. Because the second explanation is that the map allowed it to happen to repair and mend the friendship between Discord and Starlight. I don't think I need to add anything to that. $11 continuity counters, by the way. Tons of continuity. It could have all... Yeah, they do mention it's a glamour, so it could have just been straight up an illusion. Sorry, that's the other easy... I forgot to mention that, because... Rarity mentions that in the episode. You know what pisses me off most about this episode? This is gonna sound familiar. This is so close to being a great episode. It has the bones. It has the pieces on the table that I would love. It's a Starlight-focused episode that includes Discord and Trixie and a crap load of continuity, while being about the secondary characters and expanding them rather than focusing on the main six. That just sounds like awesome to me on paper. Instead, what we have is a child throwing a temper tantrum for 15 minutes and then being rewarded for it. Yeah, we could have even, if you really, really want to go with this, you could even have another episode about the main six figuring out that this was a trick, and have the whole episode be about that. Meanwhile, back at the home, Discord's like, wah ha ha, or something. I don't know. God, I just... What irritates me even more is this is not the first Discord episode I haven't liked. And for essentially the same reason. Just double irritating. Other teachers? That's crazy talk. You're trying to tell me that the most organized pony in the entire setting would actually have an organization in place specifically so that, you know, they would be able to go and... Oh my god, this freaking episode. Yeah, it's a waste of John Delancey. It's a waste of interesting character. It's a waste of everything. I'm staring at the debate here, that is to say, the rating. By the way, I remind you that this woman had written a red, a purple, and an orange episode prior to this. Oh yeah, happy N7 day. I actually forgot it was N7 day. Tell how much I care. Well, so it's funny you mentioned that Imperial Star Destroyer. I mentioned the two alternate story ideas that Nicole had in mind. She mentions in her tweets that the episode went through substantial rewrites. I find myself wondering if that's kind of what happened. Right. Like here. And I quote from Nicole. Thank you for your thoughtful discourse. That definitely wasn't one we intended to imply at all. The onus is never on you to fix someone or put up with abuse because you care. Instead, we hoped to show how a problem between friends can escalate when communication is sidelined. The original inspiration for this episode was Pride and Prejudice. Starlight would be too proud to ask for help, wanting to prove herself to Twilight on her own merits. Discord would be too prejudiced to accept anyone besides himself, especially another reformed villain around for less time than him, would be the better substitute. The story ended up changing through the process. Quote for quote. And I agree with what several people in the log here said. The consequence of that was what we get as a garbage episode. I don't think I can give this lamentation status. I'm sorry. It doesn't have... like it's just too mind-bogglingly good and bad at the same time. Obviously, a lamentation can still have good elements. That's part of the new rules. But it's really frustrating. It's basically a decently executed episode with a bad element exaggerated too far, which has the extra weirdness in order to push it down, but not quite. I can't give it lamentation status, but I can absolutely give this blue. What are we thinking about blue? Because this episode's a mess. And again, I reiterate, it should have been great. Think about that chrysalis idea I just mentioned. Think about this being a big establishing moment. We're at about the middle of the season. Chrysalis is back. She gets away at the end. She's still a threat. She's much more terrifying than before. She's unhinged. She's dangerous. Starlight has to stand against Chrysalis without anyone else's help. Except Spike. You know, Starlight, think about that for a second. Starlight and Spike versus Chrysalis, you know? Yeah, you get the idea. Blue. I do not know who rewrote this episode, but I want to reach out to them and say, what is wrong with you? And why are you so stupid? Next week, and again, as usual, I'm not looking at the summaries because Amazon likes to spoil the hell out of everything. Next week, we're coming to Hearthswarming Club. Hearthswarming episodes are usually good. And Friendship University, which I have no idea what that means. So I suppose that's it. I'm going to go get ready for a bunch of other stuff. I had a lot of stuff to do today. So I do hope you've enjoyed, as always. I will see you all Tuesday for more Mega Man. Don't worry, we're almost done with Mega Man, I swear.